if we don't have a just transition, it's very possible there won't be any transition that is effective in terms of actually dealing with climate change. And this is something that I don't think, quite honestly, the government or the Green Party, who should know this, fully comprehend. If we alienate ordinary working people from the climate change agenda, which is so urgent, if we turn them against it because we do it unfairly, it won't happen. Or there's a very, very serious danger it won't happen. And when you look at the alarming growth of the far right, which has many elements to its sick and rather twisted ideology, whether it's racism or anti-vaccination or conspiracy theories of one sort or another, but one very serious component of the rise of the far right is climate skepticism. And while many of the ideologues of the far right are just dangerous nut jobs, it gains traction with ordinary people if they feel that the measures that are being taken in the name of climate action are ones that are coming at their expense. It is hardly surprising that will be the case. And to date, this government, or the last government, or the Green Party in terms of its historical experience in government, has not seemed to grasp that. It is simply not climate justice or a just transition to, for example, increase the cost of heating your house to working people who have no choice whatsoever over whether their house is properly insulated or what type of heating system is in their house. And that is tens and tens of thousands of renters in the private and public sector. They have absolutely no choice about the heating system in their house. They have absolutely no choice about whether their house will be retrofitted. Yet year after year, they are going to be hit with an increased cost for just keeping their house warm. And on the current trajectory, the inequality will grow, because not only will the poor be hit hardest by climate measures, but actually the rich will benefit. Because of course, if you're rich, you can retrofit your house tomorrow. If you're cash rich, you can do it. And then you'll drive your energy bills down, and the amount of carbon tax you'll pay will be less. So the rich will benefit, and working people will suffer. Now, what is that going to do for popular enthusiasm for climate action? Not a lot, Minister, not a lot. What is the fact that the taxi industry is on its knees at the moment, as I have pointed out to you repeatedly, and we get vague promises about a package of support, which frankly is paltry and almost insulting, in that it is not real support. But all of the taxi drivers, and I'll tell you this, they believe your failure to support them is driven by a green dislike for the taxi industry, a determination to destroy the taxi industry, and the fact that insofar as you're interested in electrifying what might be left of the taxi fleet, it will only be for the big companies who can afford the cost of electric vehicles, because the grant you're offering of €20,000 is simply not enough for the majority of taxi drivers who are lone traders. For the big companies, maybe they can do it. For the individual taxi driver, they can't make up the €30,000 gap. So if you put them in a position where they have to replace their cars, which they will have to now at the end of this year, a major investment, how are they going to make the gap? The €30,000 gap, when they've already lost 2 years of income, and in any event it's a huge gap even if they hadn't lost income as a result of COVID. That is fueling skepticism against the environmental agenda, Minister, and against you specifically, let me tell you. Whether it's justified or not, that's the feeling out there, right? It is alienating people from the climate agenda. And you need to address it as a matter of urgency. Similarly, with the issue of public transport, right? I mean, if you want to address the climate crisis, what you've got to do is really improve the public transport that is available for people. I mean, the transformation of the use of public transport in my area, because of the investment that was put into the DART, was absolutely transformative, right? Because previously we had a bockety old diesel train, suburban railway that frankly was unpleasant for people to get on. So many people didn't do it and they got in their cars. Then there was investment in the DART and it really changed things. You could say the same thing about people on the Luas. But if you're not lucky enough to live beside the DART, or you're not lucky enough to live beside the Luas, if you're in a rural area where they're actually cutting back on the investment in public transport, or if because of the privatisation agenda that the government is facilitating inside Dublin Bus, that many of the public service routes that are off the central routes, if you like, but that serve the older population trying to get to the hospital or whatever, and they lose their bus because of the privatisation agenda, what do they think then of the climate agenda in that regard? They see it as something that is adversely affecting them. And I could go on through the examples, I haven't got time. But unless fishermen in Dublin Bay affected by the determination to put offshore wind on the sensitive areas, fishing areas, on the banks, rather than further out, as is common practice in most of the European Union, because it's too expensive for the corporations who want to make money, but actually would be the right thing to do in terms of local communities, fishermen, and indeed, ultimately, I would say biodiversity and the environment. Right? So you've got to hardwire the just transition into the brains of the government and into this legislation. You have not done that. We are trying to do that with this amendment, and you should accept it for that reason.
Thank you. Now, the final